Today, I wanted to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that is, can narcissists truly change? The shocking new research. Okay, before we dive in, make sure you subscribe, give some likes and thumbs up, drop some comments below. How's this strike you? What do you think about what I'm saying? I love the dialogue and interaction with you guys, and if you have any other questions or anything like that, put them in the comments too. So, for decades, we've all heard the same grim verdict: a true narcissist can never change. It's a belief carved into the hearts of countless people who've been burned by someone with narcissistic personality disorder. We're told it's a lost cause, that their personality is a fortress with no doors. But what if that's not the whole story? What if there's compelling evidence that points to a path for genuine transformation, however difficult that might be? Well, a 2024 case series published in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease by researchers from Harvard Medical School and McLean Hospital provided clinical evidence that full remission from narcissist personality disorder is possible. This isn't just a myth or wishful thinking, it's a crack in a wall that was once thought to be impenetrable. So before we get into the research, we do want to acknowledge that there is a reality that has shaped our view of narcissism. If you've ever been close to someone with NPD, you know that it can be very challenging. The charm and idealization, followed by devaluation, callousness, complete lack of empathy, the manipulation, the lying, and so forth. Narcissism personality disorder, or NPD, isn't just being arrogant. In the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual, it's defined as a deep-seated pattern of grandiosity, a constant need for admiration, and a profound inability to feel for others. The narcissist's sense of self is both massively inflated and yet incredibly fragile at the same time. Think of it like a magnificent, towering statue that's secretly hollow and could shatter with the slightest tap. This is why change has always seemed so out of reach. The disorder itself fights against it. How can someone change if they genuinely believe they're perfect and every problem is somebody else's fault? This lack of insight is the main roadblock. They don't see an issue with their own behavior, so the motivation to do the brutal work of self-reflection just isn't there. And then any attempt to challenge their worldview is often met with rage, contempt, or icy withdrawal. That one's me, the icy withdrawal. This isn't just stubbornness, it's a core defense mechanism. For a person with NPD, admitting a flaw can feel like a threat to their very existence, triggering immense shame and anger and defensiveness. And this is why so many people hit a wall. They believe that if they just love the narcissist enough or give them an ultimatum, that they'll see the light. But countless personal stories and other older research has shown that external pressure is rarely enough to spark change, or a real change. The desire has to come from within the narcissist. So that brings us to this research that's forcing us to go through a major reevaluation. Because these researchers from Harvard and McLean Hospital conducted a case series following 8 patients who all met the full diagnostic criteria for NPD. These were not just people with a few narcissistic traits. These were individuals with a full-blown clinically diagnosed disorder. And the patients then went through a long-term psychotherapy program, including psychodynamic therapy and mentalization-based treatment for about between 2.5 to 5 years. And the results stunned the researchers. At the end of the treatment, all 8 patients had improved so much that they no longer met the diagnostic criteria for NPD. This is what the researchers called remission. Their ability to work, go to school, maintain healthy romantic relationships had also dramatically improved. Before treatment, most struggled to hold down a job or a healthy partnership, but by the end, they were financially independent and in stable relationships. Now, let's keep in mind, remission is not a cure, and really, narcissism isn't something that we're trying to necessarily cure as the narcissist. It's really about understanding ourselves and being aware of what's going on so that we can operate in a world in a satisfactory way, actually do things like have jobs or have healthy relationships. And this research doesn't mean that every narcissistic trait has vanished for the people, but it does prove that the life-destroying patterns of the disorder can be broken. And there's other studies to back this up, with one showing a 2-year remission rate of 53% for NPD as a categorical diagnosis. So, if remission is possible, what does that brutal multi-year journey look like? Let's be clear, it's not a simple fix. It is a grueling long-term commitment to intensive psychotherapy, self-examination, and self-awareness, with daily, moment-by-moment insight, practice, and response. So some of the approaches they used in the research were transference-focused therapy to uncover deep-seated beliefs in the NPD person. This type of therapy helps them confront the painful ideas from their childhood and replaces them with healthier ones. Another approach they used was called mentalization-based treatment, and this therapy helps people learn to mentalize, to see themselves from the outside and others from the inside. In other words, it helps them build empathy by teaching them to recognize and care about the inner worlds of other people. But none of these things work without one non-negotiable ingredient, that individual's own genuine desire to change. This motivation often only appears after a major life crisis, a devastating divorce, a public failure, hitting rock bottom that shatters their self-image. It's only in that moment when their defenses are broken that they might be willing to face the excruciating pain and journey of true self-reflection. This requires what people call the brutal self-honesty. And it means confronting the shame they've spent their entire lives running from and taking responsibility for the pain they've caused. And now it's a marathon and definitely not a sprint, and one of the most difficult journeys in all of mental health. And that's why for many years it was thought to be impossible. The new research is hopeful, but it can also be dangerous if misinterpreted. It's vital to use information to create realistic expectations, not to cling to a false hope in an abusive situation. So let's bust a few myths. Myth number one, that's the myth that we're talking about here, that narcissists can never change. This 2024 study and others directly challenge this, showing that in some cases, with long-term intensive therapy and work, they can. The reality is that change is possible, but it remains not the norm, so rare, and requires extraordinary commitment from the individual. But once you become self-aware and understand the patterns, that commitment becomes a little easier, at least from my own experience, because now you see that glimmer of hope that having a life that's more satisfying and relationships that are satisfying is possible. And so it definitely makes it more likely that you're willing to do that work. So myth number two, that the normie in the relationships love and support can change them. And this is probably the most painful myth. While support is important if someone is already committed to making the change, you can't love someone out of a personality disorder. The choice and the work must be their own and generated from their own desire to make a change. It's kind of like we hear that with addictions and stuff. You know, you can't really successfully quit smoking unless you're the one who really wants to quit smoking. So similar with the narcissist, if the narcissist is committed to making the change themselves, then it's possible. But if they're doing it for somebody else, it's never going to succeed. So staying in a relationship, hoping your devotion will be the magic key, is often a recipe for your own, heartache. Myth number three, therapy is a cure that will transform them into a different person. Now, remission, like we talked about in the study, is not personality transplant. The goal is to reduce the harmful symptoms and improve function, so the person no longer meets the diagnostic criteria. So they actually have a satisfying life and have the ability and the potential to create satisfying relationships. They may still have narcissistic traits and will likely have to manage their old patterns for life. And that's really something that I try to stress on here when I talk about the successes I've had, that I don't know where the end of this is going to go. I don't know that I will ever be a normie in terms of empathy and things like that. But improvement to a functional state is definitely possible. So this is a complex and evolving field. If you want to keep learning about personality, relationships, and mental health, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. And I want to hear from you. Drop comments below. The research gives us clinical data, but lived experiences are just as important. Have you ever witnessed what you believe was genuine, lasting change in someone with high narcissistic traits? Share your story and your thoughts in the comments. So can narcissists truly change? The answer is no longer a simple, resounding no. It is complicated, cautious, and scientifically backed yes, but it's rare. Yes, but it requires years of grueling, specialized inner work. Yes, but it hinges entirely on the narcissist's own willingness to embark on that journey of brutal self-honesty. This 2024 study doesn't offer a magic bullet. What it does is offer a glimmer of possibility. It opens a door that for decades was thought to be permanently sealed. It provides a foundation of evidence that can and should build hope. Not just for the partners wishing their abusers would change, but for the individuals with NPD who in a moment of desperation or a moment of insight decide they want to find a different way to live. This research reminds us that while we should never tolerate abuse, of course, we should also be careful about declaring any human being a lost cause. The path can be staggeringly difficult, but the latest science suggests that the path does in fact exist, and it's a door that can only be opened from the inside. Thanks for watching. Hope this was useful. Remember to subscribe, give some thumbs up, comments below. I'd love to interact with you guys in the comment section. All right, take care.